educational, are fun, build community. And I'm so thrilled to welcome you tonight to Talking Theater with Todd. This is an event that happens with every show that we do, if you've not been here for one before. So at the first Thursday preview of every show, you don't need to have a ticket to this particular show to come to these events. We have a full calendar if you want to see what all these free events are. I'm happy to give you one. But anyways, I have the duty of saying a big thank you to the California Civil Liberties Public Education Program. They gave us a grant that is funding a lot of these activities for the run of For These Truths. So a big thank you to them. I'm going to pass it off to Todd for this evening's conversation.
Thank you very much, Charissa, and great to have you at San Diego Repertory Theater. Well, I always get excited about a topic related to the play that you're going to see tonight. Hold These Truths, if you don't know it already, is a one-person show. And I realize that for myself, I've written 2 one-person shows, and I've directed 2 of them as well, and it's a form that's very interesting to me. But it's different than other kinds of plays, a multi-character, even a large cast play with a chorus. I thought I would gather together a group of people who all have experience in doing one-person shows. We could talk about it, take some of your questions about how is it different to put together a one-person show. So I have a great panel tonight. On my left is Jessica Kubzansky. She is the director of Hold These Truths that you can see tonight. Welcome. She's also the artistic director of the Boston Court Theater in Pasadena. Welcome, Jessica.
Okay.
The person in the center you probably have not seen in men's clothing in a while.
Or with a beard.
Or with a beard. He is also known as Picasso in his own one-person show, and it's a pleasure to welcome the Rep's resident playwright, Herbert Siguenza. And in the Jewish Arts Festival, we've had the pleasure of working with our third guest, who has 2 one-person shows is working right now. Please welcome Phil Johnson. So I just want to start by asking, what are the one-person shows that you've worked on, just to remember back and list them by title? Sure.
I have worked on really 3 full production one-person shows, one with someone you folks might know. I've directed for many years a play now called The Thousandth Night, starring Ron Campbell. It's actually a play that takes place during Nazi-occupied France, et cetera, et cetera. I've also done a one-man show about James Beard called I Love to Eat. Hilariously and fittingly, we did it in Portland, at Portland Center Stage, which is James Beard's hometown. And of course, I've had the privilege of directing this play, which started with the title Dawn's Light and segued eventually to Hold These Truths, from its world premiere and development and world premiere through many subsequent productions.
Okay, thank you. And Herbert, what about your experience with that?
I've written a play called A Weekend with Pablo Picasso, developed with Todd. But prior to that, as you know, I'm a member of Culture Clash, and many of our shows are very modular, meaning that they're short scenes, either between 2 or 3 characters, but many times you're up there alone for 5 to 10 minutes. So I think that was my training ground, right? To be able to maintain a monologue or a character for 10 minutes, and then leave, and then someone would take over. So it's like passing a baton. I guess the difference between a one-man show is that there's no baton to pass. You have to pass it to yourself. You have to pass it to yourself, and I think that still works. It's a moment-to-moment kind of situation, and I love that. Mm-hmm.
Great, and Phil, tell us about the shows you're working on.
Yeah, I have a small theater company called the Roustabouts Theater Company, and I just finished doing my show, A Jewish Joke, that I did there, and I've traveled around the country, and I did it at a festival in New York, and then I just ran it for a month in New York this March. And I'm also putting up now my next piece, Roosevelt Charged the Bear, in time for the elections, and I took that to New York, and that'll be here in San Diego in the fall. So I started as a performer and did stand-up and writing and sketch comedy, and that's where I started writing a lot more, and a one-person show is so much of the writing. So I sometimes work with partners or I work alone, but yeah, one-person shows are their whole kind of separate animal.
I realize that all three of your work has been featured in the Lipinski Family San Diego Jewish Arts Festival. We did Thousandth Night,
Yeah.
right? We've done the Abby Hoffman piece and the Asimov piece, and we did Jewish jokes. So good to gather everyone together in one sitting from all those years. So Phil, I want to start with you. What would you see as the unique challenges of doing a one-person show? And I guess you could talk about as a writer, but also as a performer.
Well, it's very much about the energy. How can you sustain, you know? And like Herb said, you always have the next line. Who's the next line? It's always you. So that is part of the challenge. But the great thing about a one-person show is you can really get very personal with what you're trying to communicate. And a Jewish joke was very much about what do you finally stand up for in life, as well as taking a look at the pragmatic Jewish sense of humor, which I've always taken very close to my heart to get through most of life. So, and Roosevelt is very much the same kind of thing. You get very close to what you feel is a very personal thing you want to express, and hopefully you can really share that with the audience and they get something from that too.
Well, when you're developing a one-person show, is it something that changes a lot in front of the audience?
I just want to second what you said. It helps when you're very connected personally to the material.
Yeah.
In my case, I'm a painter. I have a degree in art, and Picasso has always been a big inspiration of mine. And so when I portrayed him, I felt very comfortable and very connected to the material and to his words, and really believing his words, like 100%. So that really helps. And I was painting, and I was painting like him, you know, not as him, but like him. And yeah, I think it'd be difficult to portray someone else's script. I think I would have to write it.
Yeah.
Because then I can really tailor it to my desires.
Right.
You know?
And your intersection with Picasso, really, don't you think?
Yes. My
That's a big
relationship
part of
with
it.
yeah.
How you relate to that subject.
Yes.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me is I am not the writer of any of the shows that I have directed that are one-person shows. You know, so I come to them from a slightly different perspective, dramaturgically. It's really important that I don't direct anything that I don't passionately believe in, because I'm not doing a favor to anybody. But it's interesting because as the director, I am helping shape what is singular and unique about the performer that melds with the story in really profound ways. So it's a little less, about my personal story and more about how can we illuminate to the best of our ability the power of the story that's being told with the particular performer who's telling it, because that's everything.
Let's talk about dramaturgy, and I want to get back to you, Jessica, and what you said, but start with Herbert. When you were writing the Picasso piece, you'd said to me, I'm putting everything that I've learned in 30 years of making theater, I'm putting into this piece. And I almost feel as though your thinking was, it's one man, it's me, I have to do a variety of techniques to make this a full piece of theater. What did you mean by trying to put everything you knew into this one-person show you were creating?
Well, for one thing, I've always had the desire to do Picasso since I was a kid, as a young actor, but I knew that I didn't have the life experience or the gravitas to do such a character, And so I really waited till I turned 50, and then I started thinking about writing it. So again, very personal. My physical being had to match his. I didn't want to fake it at all. I wanted to be that age.
When you see the way the piece is constructed, it has some heartfelt monologues in it, it has dancing in it, it has dreams in it, it has politics in it. Were you thinking that all these different structural elements would be a way to involve the audience and fully tell the story of a one-person show where you don't have other characters to play off of?
Right, I think that's my experience with Culture Clash. Again, that modular idea of a variety, a show, you know. It's a one-man show, but there's got to be variety in it. And those are, to me, are the most successful one-man shows, or one-person shows. I don't mean to say that, but one-person shows is that there's variety in it. Although if it's one tone the whole night, I get very impatient with that.
Phil, how do you orchestrate shifts of tone in the one-person shows that you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great point. I love the idea of like dreams. I remember your show, and that was a great expression of Picasso, the dreams, elements that you can't quite put your finger on, you know? Yeah. That is a challenge in a one-person show, that it keep your interest. Just to be straightforward, does it keep the audience's interest for a whole night? So you want to put a lot of different parts of your intersection with that person so you can get as many colors, as many issues. I researched Roosevelt for 2.5 years. I would put myself against almost anyone as an expert about Theodore Roosevelt. You have to know so much about your subject so that you can just write freely. So it's very much when you're doing a real person about research, don't you think? And yeah, so so it is. You end up pulling a lot of different things into it. There are set pieces, there are interesting sections. Oh, this is his childhood. You know, you want to take the audience on a ride, on a journey, because it can be. There are times, I don't know if you've seen them, shows, one-person shows, they can be a little on the stiff side. And then you see a show like Golda's Balcony, which is the best one-person show, I think, in the world that you've directed. That's thrilling. There's such a connection with a single actor about a single point of view, and there's nothing like that.
I think the big difference is that the audience is really the second character. We're interacting with you. We're not interacting with another actor. So that wall, that fourth wall, is broken sometimes, or very, very thin. And I think that's a big difference between one-person shows and traditional play.
It's interesting, in rehearsing a one-person show, you don't have that other character, the audience, until weeks into starting, or tonight is the show. So you learn so much, and then that's when it starts to change and develop in the next time. Jessica, tell us about the development of Hold These Truths, and also tell us about what dramaturgically and structurally makes this interesting for one person over an evening.
Yeah, well, the development, I mean, there's a really beautiful story about how this play originated. Jeannie Sakata is an absolutely brilliant actor. I've worked with her a number of times as an actor. And she saw a documentary about Gordon Karabayashi, and she was shocked that she had never heard this story, that it was not a piece of anywhere in her history books or anything. And she started going to playwrights she knew and saying, somebody has to write this story about Gordon Karabayashi. And Che Yu, who at the time, he's a wonderful director and artistic director, and at the time he was running one of the Tabor new play development labs, said to her, why don't you write it, Jeannie? And she was like, but she decided to do that. So she did years of research, and actually when she started, Gordon Karabayashi was still alive. She actually had several meetings with him. He took her on a couple of tours of places and spaces. And so there's a huge amount of, and then this is such an important story that people didn't know, that actually the biggest challenge in developing it originally is that there was so much material. When we started, I think it was 3.5 hours long. I'm not kidding. And it's because Jeannie was so inside the details of every single element of which person objected and which person was a problem, and all the lawyers and all the things. And really, the work of the first production was really about us seeing how much we could say goodbye to. Because, you know, at a certain point you simply zone out if it's too much dry information. So that was really one of the big pieces of dramaturgy at the beginning of the journey. And some of it, frankly, in early stages of development was, we took I mean, the story is all true. But I will say dramaturgically, for the sake of journey in the course of the play, for, lives are anecdotal. And whenever you're doing like a biopic or something about a real person, the challenge is always to find a dramatic moment in a life that goes on, And so I suggested rearranging a couple of key events so that they showed up in a more dramatic moment in the script than they really did in the lifespan. And we had permission from Gordon to do that, so
Without giving away too much,
Yeah.
could you explain what you mean by that? So how you shifted something for it to a more dramatic effect?
Absolutely. There's something that Gordon does. I mean, I don't want to tell. I assume you're all here because you're going to see the play. So see me after the play if you can't figure out what I'm talking about. But I'll just say that there's an event that happens Gordon gets incarcerated because he resists being put in a camp, and he goes to prison, and he orchestrates something that happens to him in another prison sentence in a way that is kind of ridiculous and amazing, and where it really happened in his life, it takes place about just a little over halfway through the play in our storytelling. It happened earlier in his life, in the actual events of his life, but it's such a delicious and dramatic moment in the life of his journey that we moved it. I think it will become clear what I'm talking about, but let's just say it involves a man who's in theory in prison being free in a really fascinating way. And it's something that really happened, and Gordon orchestrated it himself. And actually, to be frank, it came back to bite him in the ass in a certain way later. So, and it was all about him feeling so cooped up and confined that he was trying to solve a way to survive being imprisoned. So, that's a little teaser. but yeah, that event is so dramatic that after a lot of watching him in a jail cell and dealing with all the things that were falling out, we needed something that had more breath and air,
Jessica, what's the development process on this play? And I know it's been at several other theaters. When did it get set?
Yeah, so we did the world premiere with Ryan, who you're going to see tonight, and in 2007. At the time, it was a piece of neglected history about a really important Japanese-American hero that people didn't know about. And to be frank, I thought at the time that we would do that one production and that would be it. It would be done. And then starting in 2015, we have not gone 8 months without doing a full production of this play somewhere. And by the way, not just us.
What happened in 2015?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it's interesting because plays change with time, right? And the play went from being a story about a really inspiring, unassuming, but amazing hero, American hero.
Of history.
To a screaming cautionary note. I mean, I'm sad to say, but I cannot watch this play without thinking about what's happening at our borders right this second. It is screaming so loudly. And so really what happened, I think, is that the world started changing, and this play, which was a piece of history, became like, you have to see this, so we don't do it again, which I don't think we've entirely succeeded in not doing it again. But it is, it's been really profound. And the last thing I'll just say about it, because I'm sure, you were just talking about how you had to be 50 before you. And what's so interesting is Ryan, when we started the play, was single. He's gone through a journey. He's now on the other side. He has 2 kids. I mean, he's radically changed with time, and the play has changed with time. We keep honing it. Every opportunity is a new opportunity to discover its best self. So it's very fluid. It doesn't ever feel like, all right, do that again. It feels like, oh wow, today it feels like we need to do this. So
Herbert and Phil, I think the most mundane question that actors ever get asked is, how did you learn all those lines? And it's one thing if you're in a play, it's another thing if you're in a one-person play. And especially if you've written it, it's probably no easier to learn all those lines. I've worked with Herbert in rehearsal. It's not so easy. How do you learn a script that you've created? But more than that, have you ever had a story when you're performing and you're out there by yourself and you have nobody to save you when something happens?
Yes. I was doing a one-person show. It's actually two people. Sorry, the mic. I was doing a one-person show, which was a second person was off stage at Signet, and the opening night, I skipped a page. And I realized I knew it was gone, and I thought, how am I going to get back to it? And I did make most of it back. But yeah, you were always, the memorizing, I don't know about you, but it is one of the hardest parts. I literally have to staple myself to the couch to learn it. And I just went away on vacation for a month, and that's what I did. Happy vacation, memorize this thing. So that is a challenge, is the memorizing for 90 minutes.
For me, I learn lines physically, they need to be in my body. The good thing about Picasso is that I move a lot. I move and paint, I do a lot, I drink wine, I drink coffee, whatever, but I'm constantly doing something physical, so the physical action reminds me of what my next line is. So but that comes with repetition, of course, but I think I've always connected to my physicality.
I will say it's been fascinating redoing this play many times because we've changed a variety of things over time as the play grows and changes, and actors learn things in their bodies. So last night I saw Ryan in our dress rehearsal put a tie on in the wrong place. And he put a tie on in the wrong place because we used to take off some clothes and then put back on some clothes in that place. The tie is not supposed to come on for another 4 pages, but the body, no, he's great. But the body remembered that he was supposed to redress there, even though we had cut the undressing part before that, so he did the next thing, just organically, instinctively, because the body remembers more than the mind, Yeah.
I'm going to ask one more question, then open the floor up for your questions. And just to everybody, I think that's most exciting about a one-person show, and why audiences like one-person shows, is that they're being spoken to. That there's no pretense that there's a fourth wall. You're breaking the fourth wall the minute you start the play, because they're the person you're talking to. What do you learn from the audience? How does the audience shape the piece? And have you had interesting experiences with audiences in the process of doing a one-person show that were discoveries that you had in doing it? Whoever wants to start.
Just like any play, I think audience set the tone for the night. I think you have your game plan, but sometimes they want more, sometimes they want less. Sometimes they want more volume, less volume, right? They're just calibrations, little calibrations, just you feel the audience,
Yeah, I think that's true. The play I'm doing right now, Roosevelt, hasn't had a lot of performances in front of an audience, but it's important I realize who the audience is. I'm talking to myself. I'm trying to understand a little bit better my point of view. You have to make up who the audience is in your head. When I did the play in New York called The Jewish Joke, it was very funny at the top and pretty tragic at the end. So it was interesting to watch an audience go from, this is hilarious, what? So that was interesting, and every night would be different. Every city that I've played has been different, watching the tone shift from one half to another. But yeah, it's very much about the audience.
I think the funnest thing about Picasso is at one point I draw somebody from the audience. I draw them live for 2 minutes or a minute, and so that's another interaction. It's not just talking to them, but actually I don't know, drawing them, interacting, you know, and then showing the drawing to the people, and they're like, oh wow, you know, he drew him, right? So it's just another. It's untheatrical, but yet it is. You know?
I mean, what's what I love the most about doing a one-person show is just the back and forth that happens. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I found audiences are very different, which is why every place we go, it doesn't matter how many times we've done the play before, we need all the previews, because the discovery process of, and frankly, cities are different. I mean, we were just in Washington, D.C. at Arena Stage. That was the last place we did this before here. And that audience was full of people who are routinely going to the screen for it. So all the points of procedure were really familiar to them in ways that we had not experienced. You know, so it really, like, the character of the city can also change the interaction, and learning what you have to lean on more or less is always a discovery. So you are the most important piece of our next discovery process. So thank you.
So I want to be happy to open the floor up for some questions. Yes.
Todd, we call this a one-person show, yet there obviously are nuances because you're playing maybe multiple roles. I mean, Herbert Picasso, you really had one person there. But, which is odd for me. Yeah. So how many different roles do we have tonight?
37.
So the question is, there are one-person shows, which are one-character shows, but there are other shows that have multiple characters in them. The question was, how many characters tonight? So how does one actor tell a story playing
37 characters.
7 characters?
Yeah.
See, I'm jealous.
Couldn't you write 36 more guys into Picasso? You know, that's actually about, and that's where really the kind of ease of the performer comes in, because there, at this point, while Ryan and Jeannie and I did the world premiere of this play, there are now 3 other productions of it that are happening around the country with very different actors. I've been dying to see a couple of the other shows, because every solution that we made is based on Ryan's ability. You know, that particular actor's ability. Ryan has an amazing facility with characters and accents. I have to say, Ryan does a brilliant Scottish accent. We have not found a way to put it in this play. But I mean, you know, he has a great facility for playing other characters, so that's what we did. That's what we did because it's Ryan Yu. You know, if it were a different actor who was maybe a little less nimble in that way, but had something else, we'd lean on that. You know.
How in your direction are you able to help the audience distinguish in the story when it shifts from character to character in a scene where you have more than one character?
Well, I will say the major other players in the production you're going to see tonight are Light and Sound. Light and Sound are doing so much beautiful, heavy lifting. They are absolutely, essentially what is going on in there is a man, 3 chairs, some light and some sound. But we go a million places, spaces, locations, emotional places, and it's all a dance with an actor, some chairs, light and sound. And so I hope I'm helping motivate you by taking you to Manhattan and taking you to Seattle and taking you to, and that's a lot of specificity of movement. And this was also true in Ron Campbell's show.
I was thinking about Ron as you're talking.
I mean, when characters are talking to the other guy, when you see 37 characters, you have to remember, oh my God, that's one man in perpetual motion for 90 minutes. You know, which I know you guys are doing as well. But when he's playing other characters, you forget he's both sides of the equation, you know? And so part of it is literally being helpful in, you put the guy with the rifle over there. So now when you look up and you're the kid talking to the guy with the rifle, you need to make sure you're spotting him there, because it looks like you're looking at his knees as opposed to his face. So I'm trying to help him very specifically help you envision the other guy by being really clean and clear about what's going on.
Super interesting. Phil, how do you handle multiple characters when you're on stage?
Well, I've done
Both kinds, where there's a lot of characters. I did.
Use the mic.
Oh, sorry. I'm talking to Todd. I wrote my own Hound of the Baskervilles, and there were 14 people in that. So that was that kind of experience, and it was very fast and very funny. My last play was just one guy on the phone, and I talked to 14 different people. And what you have to do then is, as you're talking to the person, you become a different, it's a way of talking, like how would you talk to your agent? How would you talk to your mother? How would you, so you convey who you're talking to from the way you talk to them on the phone. And now playing President Roosevelt, there's only a couple of other character things I put in, and I kind of do it like he's just telling a joke, he's telling a story. The man said to me, "Why don't you get out of there?" So it's different. I think every subject, like your show, do you talk to other people on your show? Or it's just you?
Not really, it's just
Yeah. Yeah,
Which
you
is
make
really
those
weird
choices
because
writing.
I'm known as a character actor.
Yeah.
So it's really weird that I play one character. And so I think my next show, I would like to play multiple characters and come up with a story. I just don't know what. I want to let you know about, Rick Salinas was supposed to be here, but he's my partner in Culture Clash. Next year, he's coming with a show where he did not write it, but he portrays 19 characters in 57 Chevy. So come back and see that.
Awesome, thanks for the great question. I think one of the other things we like about one-person shows that a multiple character show allows you to do is display virtuosity as an actor. And I think that's one of the things that you're able to see all the different skills and techniques of an actor as they go through a one-person show doing something incredibly difficult. Another question. Yes.
I was saying that the first compliment book is, I haven't seen yours yet, but those reads that are two of my very favorites, the writing and the acting, and I have nothing but admiration for that.
Great, just complimenting the Herbert and Phil as being incredible
But I
artists.
was going to ask you, when you're doing your own show, and you have everything by memory, but you're reading your audience, and your audience responds to a particular line, and you were kind of off guard by it. Do you then go on?
Move on.
No. Do you improvise? And do you ever go off script?
Interesting.
Or do you always stick just with the script?
Yeah.
Or you kind of go along with your audience? Because
Well,
you're
The
the
question
master.
is, do you, when you're doing the show and the audience gives you a unique response, do you ever change the script or adapt what you're saying to the response that you're getting? I don't think Herbert ever does that when I'm in the audience.
You just keep on script, no matter what it is. You just keep
I haven't really done that. I've done a couple of, I used to do stand-up comedy, and when I did that, then you could be free. But when you're doing anything, especially with that 14 characters, you better know where you're going next. So, not so much.
Yeah, not so much.
You just keep on
Hopefully your show's tight enough where there's no opportunity for that. You know what I'm saying? If the audience is reacting differently, then something's wrong, I think. You left that space open. That's what I think.
Oh, interesting.
Well, you were looking at it like they responded negatively on someone. I was saying that if they responded positively on a line that you didn't expect, and you're thinking, well, maybe I can really go on with this and get one more laugh out of it or
Yeah.
something like that.
It's kind of dangerous. I just, move on, I guess.
But, okay.
I mean, I love laughter, but it's a science. It's a science, yeah.
Okay, so you have to keep it
Because sometimes too much cream is not good.
Okay.
Well said.
The only exception is when something goes awry. I mean, somebody placed a step in the wrong place last night, and Ryan stepped down thinking it was there, and it wasn't, which caused a trip. And as it happened, he was playing a fraternity brother at that moment, and so he said, "I had a little too much to drink," which was literally to cover the weird wobble that happened. But that's not because he wanted to. He's just being a smart actor. And,
One more question?
About the hearing.
So then I'll ask the last question. What projects do you have coming up, and what can we look forward to, both one person and multiple person? Bill, want to start?
Well, like I was saying, my next piece that I'm working on is a play called Roosevelt Charged the Bear, about Theodore when he was just made president. And with my theater company, the Roustabout Theater Company, we're opening a play in March by my co-founding member called Guntopia, which will be about reawakening what it is to feel like with this onslaught of what's happening with guns in our country, and what can people do to be in the conversation. So that's our next piece. But my writing is continuing on. I'm doing a piece about John Adams now, so that's my next thing.
I'm happy to say that 2019 has probably been my most productive, creative year ever. It really has. It's with Culture Clash, my solo work, we did Picasso, and I'm ending it strong. I have a couple. Did anyone see Bad Hombres, Good Wives? Great. Thank you. That was the woman. No, but tomorrow at Onstage Theater down in Chula Vista, a very nice small theater. I'm doing a reading of Charles Borges' Blue Period, which is about Picasso's Blue Period in the early 19th century in Paris. It's very interesting. It's a three-hander, so I'm very excited about that.
And then you have an original play coming up here at the Lyceum.
Yes, and here in December 16th, I have an adaptation of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. It's called The People's Cuban Christmas Tale.
Is that English or Spanish?
And it's as you can imagine, it's going to have music and a lot of socialism.
Which is in this time of year.
That's it.
Jessica, what's coming up for you?
My next production has more than one actor in it, actually. I'm doing, I have the privilege of working with Alfred Molina doing The Father, which is a very beautiful play by Florian Zeller, translated by Christopher Hampton at the Pasadena Playhouse. So that will go up in February.
Great, and my next production is The Humans, which is the next show in San Diego Rep season. We go into rehearsal in it in mid-December. So thank you so much for joining us, Talking Theater with Todd, Phil Johnson, Herbert Siguenza, Jessica Kubzansky. What great guests. We hope you enjoyed tonight's first preview of Hold These Truths. Thank you very much.